You have anything else you want to say?
What? Sorry, guys. I was just being ill.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the stream.
Shut up!
My name is Mike D'Angelo, and I'm joined... Oh, wait, I'm also that Tellest guy. And I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Blarg.
Hi.
Rhianna's not feeling too good. And if we make her laugh extra much today, she's going to be like them weasels in that Rogers Rabbit.
What do you mean? I don't understand. Alright, well, I'm professional. I'm normal and totally...
Go ahead, Miss Professional. We're going to let you...
Don't make me do this. If you love me, you'll never
It sounds like I've got you tied up in a basement as my co-host. He's making me do this against my own free will.
It's been 14 years of Stockholm Syndrome, so I can't even...
By whom to whom?
I don't know, but you keep me happy with coffee in the morning, and that's okay.
That's the one key thing.
Oh, God.
So, folks, we are...
Shut up.
This is love. Folks, we are here today talking about the art and artisans of the world of Tellest. We wanted to kind of discuss what it's like to live in a world filled with magic and how that might affect the way art is produced, why it's produced, that kind of stuff.
And it's kind of pertinent for the world today because of the rise, I think, of AI, which is, in a way, magical. Like, you enter in what you want to see and it shows you what you want to see. If you could do that with magic in a fantasy world, what does that mean for artists in the traditional sense? Like, people who hone their craft over years and years and years, what value would be assigned to that? Is it more special in a way? Or is it less special in a way? Like in the way that photographs replaced portraits.
We're gonna jump into our first picture just to have a picture up. But I think what I want to say is it's kind of like in Star Trek, right? They have replicators, but they still talk about how like there's something special about making the food yourself.
Right, and they still gather together to see concerts, even though they could have like an orchestra play whatever they want at any given time. Like they have access to the whole of all stuff, but they're still impressed by someone doing it with hard work and like a skill that you grow.
Who doesn't want to see Riker play on a tuba?
Oh, we love Riker and his tuba.
So how about you lead us with the pictures when we bring them up, since you were the one who curated our list today.
Sure. So there's two characters here, technically three if you count Gaston, who I assume would have some sort of artistic abilities in his arsenal.
So the way that I've always envisioned these characters, and we'll get more into what you were going to say in a second, but I feel like Lucinda is definitely you and Gaston is definitely me.
Yeah.
There's artistic abilities for both of these characters, but I feel like from a visual medium, Lucinda is definitely the one who can kind of picture those things, and I feel like Gaston is more clerical.
Right, but it's still, I mean, even, you technically wouldn't say you're an artist in, like, your skill set.
Correct.
But you do things artsy. You can put things together in an artistic way. And I've seen you draw, and you don't draw half bad. He sketched half the sigils that we have on the flags and stuff, and they look great.
It's not quite as bad as, like,
Concepts
it's not quite as bad as a stick figure.
No, he's got some talent. And I assume, so the reason I was saying that is because Adelia, who's on the right...
There you go.
Okay, the right hand side. I get confused because you're looking at it. Anyway.
No, you get confused because you don't know your right and your left.
I know them. I just don't.
I know them. We're just not friends.
I know them. They don't really like me. Adelia has, like, in the books shown that she, like, is interested in
sketching and stuff like that.
Yeah, like botany.
Scup? Were you going to say scup?
Sketching.
Why scup?
I don't know. You said something and then I
said
something. Listen. Shush. So I feel like, there has to be a level of traditional artisan skills when it comes to learning, especially if you're trying to identify plants out in the wild or different, like, tree types. There's certain things that are just visual, and it's very hard to just explain that in writing. And I would say that's true of a lot of people. And I would especially imagine if you're in a world of magic and you've got different insects, you've got different creatures and stuff, it would help to have a little bit of a visual aid.
Yeah.
Then you have Lucinda, who's in the purple, who's a transfiguration specializing sorceress who can literally envision something and create it from...
Change its properties from something else.
So
she changed a squirrel into a horse in the...
To a man. It was a man.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, oh boy.
Sorry, I was thinking of the Cinderella.
No. But essentially, she's kind of a fairy godmother in that sense. So, like, we have, if you go on an adventure with Lucinda, you're not camping in a tent. You're camping in, like, a 5-star hotel.
Yeah, this is a manor house that was a pumpkin.
Exactly. So you're with somebody who can literally make whatever they want, and she's got a lot of style. It might be a little gaudy for Gaston's taste, but she can make opulence from nothing, and that makes sense for her backstory because she grew up poor essentially and then husbanded her way to riches.
Husbanded her way to riches many times.
Exactly.
Because there were 7?
There was 7 husbands, and they all befell tragedy. But she can essentially make anything out of anything. So if you wanted a sculpture of something, she could probably just create something and leave that magic there, because we don't have like a time limit on the transfiguration magic. So she could create like...
Well, that's not true. We did say that it's hard to maintain it in the book.
I feel like it could... Well, alright, so she could sell it and then leave, and it turns out you know what I mean? Like, that could be why she's traveling.
You have to say that, like, she might not be the kind of person that does it, but there are definitely people who does it.
Of course, and does that mean that there's...
Because remember, the whole thing was, like, yes, like, it's bread, and you could, or it's a rock, and you could change it into bread.
But it's still a rock in your stomach.
Yeah.
You're passing a rock at the end of the night.
Right.
Yeah, so... What would that mean? Like, if there is somebody who can fabricate, or they have the magic to be able to transfigure or fabricate something, is there more of an effort to confirm authenticity of an artist? Or is there just more, and would that be, like, something restricted to cities and stuff? Like,
right.
Do you have snooty hipsters where Ongo Gablogian would go into an art gallery
and say derivative? I'm more concerned with if she were to make a statue out of a rock, would it accidentally have 6 fingers on one hand more often?
Like AI.
Yeah.
I feel like Lucinda in particular would be very attentive to detail because she wouldn't want anything to be, like, less than perfect.
Right.
But...
Well, so she's, like, top level, right?
Right,
like,
right. She's an expert in the art of transfiguration.
She transfigures so well that it might as well be its own art medium, right?
Right.
Like... But what would it be like for a novice who is trying to do that, maybe not necessarily to make it an art of their own, but to try and manipulate and make a false equivalent to existing art?
Right, so the, like, magical forgery's gotta be a thing. And then we also considered, like, if there's the equivalent of, like, an earthbender in Tellest, and someone can manipulate and shape, like, rock or earth or something, and they make a sculpture, is that art in the same sense? Yeah, there you go. Is that art in the same sense as if somebody had a chisel and a mallet and carved it, like, from stone? Would it be cheaper? Or, like, like, how do they assign value? That's a pretty sexy statue right there.
Sorry, I just thought it would be fun to do a little
zoom in.
pan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not intentional. Things just happen. I feel like when it comes to something like that, when you're an earth shaper, essentially in the world of Tellest, say you're not a quote unquote mundane. You're not just chiseling with tools. You're doing it with some kind of magical ability. It's still technically that you're doing some kind of shaping, right? Like, you might have a better visual. Like, if you had that power, if you could just kind of take a slab of rock and just kind of point to it and everything like that, you're still using your mental processing.
Right.
I'd be able to see what it was in my head, right? But, like, I would never be able to if I had that power.
That's interesting. That's a very interesting concept. I didn't even think about that, because if you're trying to make something 3D or capture an image in any way via magic, does that magic also take a level of skill and understanding
Right,
instead
right.
of it just being inherent?
Like, yes, you have the ability to carve without tools, but does
Right.
that still mean that that doesn't help you visualize
Right.
any better, right? Like, in theory, there probably is magic in the Tellest universe that will allow you to do that,
Right.
but
Well, when you think about like the fire users, right? They're just going to, like, they don't start out being precision artists with their stuff. Like, they can set their homes on fire and, you know, hurt people in the process, and then they learn to hone that magic.
yeah,
So
the two of our biggest fire users that we know about both did something where they were going to burn a place down.
right,
So
because it's a, I mean, that's
it's a volatile power.
it's a volatile power, exactly. And then you've got like Elsa made ice sculptures left and right, and
right
like,
off the bat too.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk a little bit more about like the statue makers and everything like that. If you're a novice, are you doing something that's the equivalent of a stick figure with stone? Are you like, hey, my little guy, he doesn't even have fingers?
Yeah, I would imagine so, and I would assume that in a fantasy world, in the same way that, like, you know, fantasy worlds in medieval Europe are very intertwined. We kind of have a blend of medieval and like Victorian steampunk-esque elements. So I would imagine with that level, you've got like an Age of Enlightenment level of change. So there has to be some sort of artisanal like shift in the world at that point as well.
Well, and that makes me think, like, let's talk a little bit about the other things that kind of contribute to whether or not you could be good at your hobby or whatever you're going to call it, your art.
Yeah, like you can join a trade or a guild.
But that's not even what I'm talking about. All right, like, historically speaking, the only way that you were able to pursue something like that was if you had money, right? Like, who's to say someone who works in the mines and has discovered that they have the ability to shape rock is going to be able to do that exploratory sense of their skill, instead of them just going, all right, you're the guy that points at the wall now and, you know,
does what they need to do. I mean, I would consider it in the same way that anyone uses or develops a skill like whittling, like woodworking and stuff. Like, you start very small, you start with very basic shapes, and then as you get used to those basic forms, you kind of graduate, like, to...
Sure, but are they given the opportunity, is what I'm saying. Like, if you're Michelangelo or you're, you know, Leonardo da Vinci, you have patrons that are saying, the reason that you're able to explore these things is because I'm paying you, so you don't have to worry about a mundane job to put food on your table.
Right. Well, I would imagine so this is also an interesting concept. Michelangelo, like, famously said that the work itself was already in the stone, and he was just
discovering
letting it free.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, like, a magic user would feel the same way, instead of it being an art, like they're saying, like the golem or the whatever was already inside.
Well, and I think that kind of goes back to what we were saying. It may be...
It's cerebral, like there's something in their mind.
Not even that. It's specific to the magic user, right? Because not every artist has the same process. You know,
No, I was going to laugh because I was imagining someone making like one person making like a beautiful Pegasus like from stone, and another person going, "There's my pig."
There's my pig. But he's got wings. He's my Pegasus.
A Pegasus. Oh God, I hate you.
That's love.
I know, I love you.
That's so much love.
Pegasus. Well, that's going to be a painting.
I'm sure someone has got it.
Well, when pigs fly is a typical thing, but like a Pegasus.
But someone has had to have called it a Pegasus.
I love it.
Anyway, so you picked this picture. What does this picture mean to you?
So little Maximus with his little
rat. We have another rat, don't we?
Yeah, I think I
put
it in there somewhere.
Well, when you got that,
that's the horse. So this is the tinkerer that we have, which is another art form. Like the mechanist, I would say, in this sense, are less like mechanics in our sense, where they fix something that's existing. These are like engineers. These are people who can, well, in his case, he can imbue magic basically in these
right. He's finding like magical things within the world that he can then kind of attach to
right.
tinkered things.
But he is inherently, Maximus is very much an artist in the same way that like Leonardo da Vinci was an artist.
Yes.
Like he likes to invent, but also dissect and make like he's making a mechanical horse
right.
through the study of horses and how they function.
Right. When we are introduced to him in the first book, he's got half of a horse.
Right.
Because he's trying to learn about the musculature and the bone structure and
exactly.
stuff like that.
He's 100% your Renaissance man who's creating these things in an homage to reality, but he's using them as a means to an end in a useful sense. We talked about, I don't know if it was written down yet, but we talked about like a situation where a student of his uses the same art form or the same processes for misuse, which is also a thing that can happen.
Right. We have somewhere in the art gallery we have Zabrath, which is like a rival, which doesn't necessarily mean that he started off as like an adult. Like it could be someone who, let's see. There he is. Doink.
Yay.
The faux Aquinicus.
Right.
Faquinicus.
Faquinicus.
So Zabrath is like another version of Clockwork Steed made by, again, a rival. But I actually kind of like the idea of it being a student who's kind of like going through his lessons too quickly
right.
and too, you know.
And similarly with artists, you've got like, so I would say if he was sort of the Renaissance man, like, and trying to capture sort of that realism, you might have a modernist, a postmodernist, an impressionist who's trying to do the same thing, but just making it really different.
Yeah, very much so.
To either, you know, it's beauty for what it is or to its detriment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that becomes sort of dangerous when you think of like, I mean, even artists today, you've got some really wild ones, like the duct tape banana to a wall, like it's art, it's fine, but if that art has magic behind it, is it fine? Is it not okay? Is it like a prank that goes awry, but you're calling it art? There's so many possibilities.
Right, and is it appreciated? Like, if someone knows that it was made with magic and it didn't take nearly as much time to do, like, is it the doing that makes something special, or is it the end result?
Right.
You know, like, there's something special. I feel like if you're looking at a time lapse, right, and then you look at someone who just clicks a button on AI and it becomes a complete piece.
Right.
Now, number one, AI is being trained on other people's models, right? Like,
yeah.
It's not like it's making any decisions on its own.
Right.
But in theory, let's pretend that AI is completely cognizant of its own abilities. It never had the training or anything like that. It just somehow is quote-unquote magic. Does it lose some of that luster if it can just get to the end in one flip, right? Like,
right.
Now, and
or
again,
is it the way that you do it? Because we've had the discussion, like, AI is not inherently artwork in the same sense that it is art if somebody, like, physically does it, or there's intention behind it for it to be art.
Right.
Is it really intentionally art if AI is just listening to your prompt and regurgitating what it knows
right.
of the internet?
It's just super thesaurusing
right.
all the stuff that you're telling it.
But then there's the possibility of, like, this is what I get excited about for our future, and I would imagine with magic users, there's already an ability to do this. So I like the idea of people being able to access mediums of art that they otherwise would not probably in their lifetime get good enough to get to that point in the traditional sense. So not in the case of, like, I'm just going to make a painting, like, you know, of what I want to see and pass this off as my own art. But if someone could utilize that as a tool to tell a story, like, if you could create a hour-long animation to put, like, to tell your story as if it were, like, a animated video or an animated movie.
Let's put it, like, in terms of something that we've already seen. Like, the guys from Corridor Crew did the Rock, Paper, Scissors anime, right? Like, it was them, and they were getting into position and, like, and then just basically telling AI, like, hey, like, turn this into a cartoon with XYZ. Like, that takes the effort, right? Like, they did millions, well, probably not millions, but thousands of frames that, you know, they were putting together. Like,
if AI could do that in a much shorter
well,
span
it was
of time,
done in AI. It was done with AI. So like they told AI like, hey, like I want you to take this picture of me in this position and change it into like an anime frame.
And I would imagine with artwork you have a similar, or with a magical world you have a similar possibility. Maybe not on screens, because I imagine in a magical world we don't have handheld devices and are looking at screens all the time. But like in a public forum, you've got a puppet show or like a theatrical performance, and you're utilizing magic to create like a scene.
I'm not using my hand to puppet something. I'm using magic to levitate, to rotate, to...
It's raining in the story, so now you have thunderclaps and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember, so I would imagine like an illusionist could do something like this. So I used to work with a girl who did an art installation in New York, I think, where it was like a multimedia thing. So she had, or it was like an experience, essentially. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice.
Someone tell us to hydrate.
Yeah, I'll do it in a minute. So, she walks in, or she had molds of ears, and like this little like white block that kind of looked like a potato with an ear on it, and each one had a speaker in it, and it was hanging from the ceiling. And she had asked people to tell, like, I forget the story. It was like a story of like their saddest moment, or like their most like serene moment, or something like that. And she had them whisper the story. So she had each ear that you put your ear to would whisper a story, but when you stepped away, the whole room was just a series of like these hanging ears murmuring little things. So if you were an illusionist, if you were a bard, and you had that ability to create that immersion, that is art.
Speaking of our bard,
that was a good tie-in.
We'll end with the bard before we go into our sponsor spot.
Okay.
But
so yeah, music is another form of art that would be prevalent in the fantasy realm, and I would even go so far as to assume that like if families aren't huddled around a TV, they're probably doing what happened in like the olden days. You had people who would play music for you, like a town that would get together.
Right.
You would
go to a tavern, or like the kid friendly equivalent or something like that.
Right.
Hang out on the town square.
Yeah, like some sort of situation where people are gathered, and
a minstrel dancing around a fountain.
Right. And the idea is that the artisans are the entertainment because they've honed a skill. So I would imagine like the school of illusion and the school of bardism.
The Bardic College?
The Bardic College of Skyrim. Yeah, I would imagine they go hand in hand to create an immersive experience. Now, if they compare what they do with magic, does that make them any more or less skilled than someone who can't do that, but they can play a mean lute?
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, if you... Are you talking about, in this situation, someone who does music through magic? Or are you saying a mundane person who's playing music versus someone who's magical telling a story a different way?
Right. Where do you define the level of skill, and how do you assign value to that? Because in the one instance, the magic is adding to the story that they're telling, and in another, somebody's really skilled at an instrument through their own hard work.
Right. And we've kind of talked about this before when it comes to like we're going to touch on something that's I'm sure going to be it's going to cause conflict. No, never mind. We're not going to broach the subject. I don't want to be that person. Let's go to our sponsor spot. And now, a word from our sponsors. Bright, quirky, and full of charm, The Mulberry Constant by Sherry Andrews introduces us to a heroine whose brilliance might just change the world. This clever, speculative tale mixes whimsy with wonder, as it follows a young girl whose extraordinary intellect is matched only by her curiosity. With humor and heart, Andrews crafts the story about possibility, about opening doors not just to the future, but to who we might become. It's breezy, imaginative, and just the kind of tale that leaves you smiling. Check out our full promo for The Mulberry Constant by Sherry Andrews on the Tellest website. We almost need to pause longer because there's a stink in this room now.
Oh my god. Our doggy has like the violentest Poots.
They're violent and vile.
Oh my god.
Luna, how come you stink so bad?
Rotten egg smell.
Luna, speak out your front now.
Yeah, because someone's not going to believe there's a dog.
Luna, speak.
Luna.
Speak.
There we go. See, she's the stink. Come here.
Are you the stink?
You are the stink.
Are you the stink, Luna?
Come here, Stinky. I remember this is a deep cut since we're talking about art. There was an episode of Doug back in the day where like a raccoon, I think, stepped in paint and walked across a canvas that was on the floor. Or was it Pork Chop, his dog?
I
want to say it was something that walked across a canvas, and like one of like the art people were like, "I love it, it's amazing." Do you remember that? Like it's a very deep cut, but
but I think, and that brings to light like other things that you can do with art too, where it's like I don't know necessarily that a lot of it's skill or some of it's just luck or some of it's the person who's involved.
Right.
Someone can do something that's like the red line painting. Let me see if I can bring that up real quick.
The all white with the one red vertical line or whatever.
You keep talking. I'm going to bring this up.
I've actually, I don't know if I saw the original in the Philadelphia Art Museum, but
this one, right? I think
there's one that's like, yes, I hate this. I hate this so much. It's controversial, but like, whole damn slideshow. I do not like this type of art, and I think this is like postmodern art or something. I don't remember what category it falls under, but
like, speaking to what we're talking about, like
this just visibly get rid of it. You know what though? It's having an intended reaction,
right?
And
right.
Other people,
and that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's creating an emotional reaction in me, and I guess that's the whole point, right?
And there's other people who I'm sure appreciate this and actually like it. You know, like
it's elegant. It's simple. It reminds me of this. It's a.
I don't need a quarter of the flag of Finland or whatever.
It's a contrast to whatever.
No.
You know, I think that just summed up, like, what the fantasy world probably is. It's probably a reflection of what we do, which is argue about art. And it creates a conversation about what actually constitutes art and what doesn't. And I would say the wizards are probably in on it, because you've got a variety of different wizards who make it their job, essentially, their lifelong pursuit for the pursuit of knowledge, and a lot of that's going to have to involve the study of art and artistry in some way.
Well, let's talk about this a little bit more, right? We got back to our wizard, we got back to Gaston, we talked about how he's probably more of a claromancer than anything, but he still did do, like, the fireworks show a la Gandalf for Adelia.
Yeah,
right? Like, and the dragon-shaped fireworks and stuff like that.
And a lot of magic has to do with art. So you've got like runes, you've got sigils, you've got like alchemical symbols and stuff. You have to have some level of like, you can't be writing that in like bubble letters and glitter.
Right.
I mean,
well,
maybe.
Let's talk about like functional art for a second, right? Like you mentioned sigils. How much more important and easy is it for a town or a city to say, we need to make sure that people know like how far our stuff ranges. Let's have like a novice wizard go out there and really quick tag a bit of art without having to have supplies or something like that. And I'm sure like in some cases wizards do have supplies, right? Like there are some who like, rely on reagents and stuff like that.
And I would imagine cartography is also a big skill, and that has to do with. And
we've seen that in Gaston's case too, because in the at least in the third book, I can't remember. I think it's the third book where he associates like a blank piece of parchment with Adelia, and then just like a mini map in a video game, she starts to kind of map out, the Okalacho.
We don't have MapQuest.
Right.
Like in the fantasy world, it just doesn't exist.
But they do, kind of.
If you have the skill to be able to.
Let me ask you this: in a situation where you're a very powerful wizard and you know where you need someone to go, right? Like someone says, "Hey, I'm going to give you this quest. You should go see this wizard. They can help you get there."
Right.
And that wizard knows, all right, you're going to this town. You know in Fable how you have the golden breadcrumb trail?
Yeah.
Is that a possibility?
I love that, yes. Or maybe they have, like, a freaking magical quest marker that they can, like, put up so that you... Or a compass, like, more realistically. They enchant a compass so that it points in the direction that you have to go.
But I think what we're kind of saying is that any of this is really viable, right? Because in theory, like, any of these magical things is possible because you're talking about a world with endless possibilities.
Exactly. And I think that there is a discussion for art and artistry in that. Well, we were talking about magical statues, so I wanted to bring this up, Remembered in Gold, where literally they are trapped within, essentially, a golden statue. Were they praised? Was the artist of this doom, like, praised for the realism because it's an actual human trapped in?
Right, and is that pretty much right up into the, like, AI is copying the work, right? Because yes, it probably looks very real and very lifelike because it's just
it's 3D tracing.
You're casting gold, right?
Exactly.
You got some orcs and Laganos in here too.
So I wanted to focus on, like, the styles of art. So we have sort of these races that are more tribal, and then switch over to the Lagano real quick. They are kind of Egyptian-esque. You've got, like, sort of those elements to it, and I would imagine that makes sense within, like, the worlds that they live in, because if you have, like, a tribal thing, you're obviously going to add the elements that are around you. You've got birds of variety, so you got, like, feathers. You've got, if you're a warring culture, you've probably got skulls and bones that you're using for art.
There's a lot of gold when it comes to the Lagano too.
So versus the Lagano, maybe the areas that they live in are abundant in that mineral, so they're able to create these things. Like, Egyptians are associated with gold because they had access to gold. They had
gold,
like,
and marble. And
they had the ability. They had the ability and the tools to be able to make this. So I think that really informs the level of artistry, because would a Lagano find... switch back, an orc's attire, just in this case, or an art, like, would the art of a different culture be appreciated in the same way that, like, we can look back on ancient cultures and, like, appreciate, like, Aztec art is very different from Chinese art, which is very different from the art of, like, India, Russia, like, all these different areas and locations. Do they look at it with that same appreciation, or are they, like, because they're all existing in the same space, do they sort of not appreciate or inform each other's work? Does, like, the socio-political climate kind of...
Let's talk about the visualization process a little bit again. So, in a situation where you've got, you know, an orc and a Lagano of these tribes or whatever... is their sort of clairvoyance, is it a way of communing with their gods that's informing the way that their attire should look and the way that their culture should look?
Could be.
Or is it just someone saying, I like gold and I'm going to make everybody think that the gods said we're going to, you know, inline everything with, you know, gold leaf and...
Well, if my weird... recall of stupid facts is anywhere near accurate, I will try and I hope this is accurate. I think it is. Ancient Egyptians were all drunk because Nile water.
Well, there was a lot of beer that they would ferment.
You can't drink the Nile water, so they would essentially drink beer more often than not.
Beer was safer,
like, the hops
and I think that was true of most medieval society as well.
Right.
You would do it that way because, like you said, water was not as potable as it is today.
Right. And I think the priests of... I don't remember if they're priests. They're, like, some sort of, like, mystics, but they also had, like, sway over society. They had, like, a specific drug.
It was the Barbers.
The Barbers? What?
Not Barbers, Barbers.
Barbers?
Yeah.
Oh my god. I don't know what that means.
Welcome to my world.
I'm lost. Hang on. Wait, where was I? Oh, there was some sort of, like... I don't think it was a lotus, but it was some sort of plant like that where it would basically give them... They'd be tripping. They'd be hardcore tripping. And they would come back from their, like, spirit journey and essentially have, like, these weird roadmaps for people to follow for like creations, like pyramids and sculptures and stuff like that. So like there's a level of artistry that came from being high AF. Is that divine in that case? Like,
right.
like I would imagine in the world of Tellest,
Well,
you have legitimate, like, the gods are physical entities that exist and have proven to exist. So it's
right.
not a metaphysical conversation. It's
but
like,
it could be, right? Because like the whole concept of religion in general is what I heard from the Lord's mouth, or the one of the many gods' mouths, or something like
Right.
that, right? Like, so just because you know that they exist doesn't necessarily imply that it's always real, right? Like, you can
Right.
still have a trippy moment and it have nothing to do with that bush was talking to me, but
Right.
it was just a bush and you were just high AF.
Right. Now, in the world of Tellus, though, you could, in theory, well, I don't remember, something happened to the gods, right?
Yeah, well, in this timeline.
So, like, yeah, so in theory, you would have had, at one point, the ability, kind of like the Greek god. They're more like the Greek gods than, I think, anything else, because
Sure.
you had interactions at some point. So if someone was mad tripping and saying, like, oh, this, you know, this entity told me this, they could theoretically go, no, I didn't, bud, that was entirely you, but...
Right, but who's to say what's true or what's not?
Right.
That's the tricky part.
In
like,
this timeline, because they're not there to kind of like defend themselves.
well,
in,
even
like, a
even in the
mundane
timeline
sense.
where they were, right? Like, would a god get involved with that, or would they find it was funny if they knew about it at all?
If they're
right?
if they're after the or if they're modeled after like the Greek gods, they think it's hilarious because
this guy this guy just ate the wrong berries,
yeah.
was tripping,
Yep.
and thought he was talking to me, but I was over there making babies with a giraffe.
I mean, that would be very much in the style of the Greek gods.
All right, I gotta say, I feel like because it's getting hot in here,
Oh yeah.
my brain is starting to get a little loopy. It's getting a little
Yeah.
fried.
Starting to. We've been loopy for like the past hour, sir.
For the past 13 years.
Oh my, yeah, 14 years.
Do you have anything else that you want to contribute to tonight's episode?
Yeah, we didn't talk about pigmentation, luma bugs, pigments.
Pig,
So we talked about
Pegasus mentation?
Yeah, Pegasus mutation. Yeah, I just wanted to briefly bring up that we were talking about like the there we go. You know, the fact that like paint pigments used to be very much from the natural world. So like there was a type of blue that you could only get from a beetle or something, like the shells of a beetle ground up.
I think it's red.
Is it red?
I think it's red.
I want to say it's blue, but it might be like purple, and we might both be correct.
You're gonna keep talking, and I'm gonna do the research.
But anyway, the idea behind it is basically if you can make color out of mundane reagents, and then you have this world where you could make them out of magical ones, what type of properties can you expect out of that? Like we have paint that has like metallic and like sparkly products, but what would happen in a situation where it's imbued with magic? Like, instead of the husk of a beetle ground up, and you instead grind up the husk of a bioluminescent creature that lives underground, does the paint bioluminesce? Does it glow in the same way?
Right, and we had kind of said, like, on the way home when we were talking about this, that one of the things that that we would want to try and do is not make it. We'll talk about that.
You were right.
I
don't like that.
I don't like when you're right. We had talked about how, you know, we didn't want it to be like the Luma bugs, which we have on screen here, sort of.
They're Christmas lights.
They're Christmas lights. we didn't want it to be that because we thought that, like, the Luma bugs would be hunted to extinction.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make, like, the more rare pigmentation come from rarer and harder to find stuff. So we were thinking, like, the Everdark, you know, like you'd have a beetle or like snails or something
Right.
that were down there that you could hunt, but like it's dangerous to do that, you know, like that's where all the biggest, baddest monsters are. So it's a risk, you know, is it one that you're willing to take? And what do those ones do? Like you said, you know, like you had fluorescent and stuff like that, yeah. But did you have ones that had a glow in the dark kind of mechanic, or did you have ones that kind of do more than that? Like,
right. I would imagine, like, so when I think of Bob Ross paintings and stuff, like one of the most amazing things was when he had like rays of light or like the sparkle of light off of water. If you could make a paint that captured sparkle, like,
yeah,
not in a glittery way, in like a luminescent like the light
a feel
is actually there.
Science just made a new color. Let me see if I can bring that up. But it made me think Zaz. Do you remember Zaz?
Well, I was high AF when I came up with that.
So talk to us about Zaz a little bit.
So it was like many moons ago in like college days, and we were on like a riverside, and it was nighttime, and I looked over the water, and I swore there was a color that I had never seen before. It was between like a teal and a vibrant purple that was reflected on like the surface of the dark water. Now that I think about it, it was probably like an oil spill or something that was like...
You saw like a little bit of like a weird rainbow.
Yeah, like some sort of pollutant with like the light flickering on it, but I was like, this is a brand new color. Are you seeing the color that I'm seeing? I'm gonna call it Zaz.
So science did not make a Zaz, but they made an Olo, which is a blue-green hue that's more saturated than any color humans can normally see.
It's basically a saturated teal.
Right, and it's not really a new color, it's just they were able to kind of define it.
Capture it.
Right.
Like a seafoam green,
right.
essentially.
Yep.
Well, isn't the mantis shrimp the creature that can see, like, more colors than anything?
Yeah, I think the mantis shrimp has... It's either 3 or like 10 cones of color. Like humans have
it's more than 10. Like it's a ridiculous amount.
Let's find out.
How many you're probably gonna be right again. Dang it.
Of color does a pistol shrimp? Might be a mantis shrimp.
I said mantis.
Mantis toboggan shrimp have 16.
16.
16 types of color sensitive cone cells, whereas humans have 3.
Right. So they see the world in a very different way than we do.
Right.
And I would imagine, like, those colors exist, we just can't pick them up. This is getting too trippy, and then I'll stop talking. But, like, one of my ideas back in the day as well was, like, if we send a robot to Mars to pick up, like, to see if there's life on there, how do we know that, like, the equipment that we have just can't pick up whatever the entity is? Like, if we're basing everything based on, like, the building blocks of the universe as we know it.
Right. And you and I have talked about this before too. Like the notion that like ants probably know that we exist but can't really
they don't perceive us.
Yeah, they don't perceive, and they can't conceptualize us.
Right.
That's very likely the way that it is for alien beings or the great beyond.
Right.
Like we are probably just ants in an ant farm to something much greater than us.
Or there is like a phenomenon where like if you're not expecting to see something, you're not going to see it.
Yeah.
Like it's just your brain's not going to process it.
Right. The same way that your brain fills in the blanks with things that it knows.
Right.
It also can't fill in the blanks when it's seeing something that it doesn't recognize.
Right. Like if I walk into a doctor's office and there's a monkey owl riding a unicycle on the ceiling, I'm not expecting to see that. I might not see it because there's nothing
Hello again, Gladys.
Yeah, like there's nothing in my brain that's going to equate that with the reality that I know.
All right, let's try and wrap this up.
Yeah.
We got two things that we have to say. A red pigment called carmine was obtained by the cochineal beetle, also known as Dactylopius coccus. It was extracted from the beetle's body and eggs, and it was used for coloring fabrics, foods, and even cosmetics. And then there was also Tyrian purple, which was acquired from sea snails.
Interesting.
And then later synthetic purple dyes like mauve.
Wow.
And then I think most of the other stuff was based on like real stuff that they found out in the
Where
wild.
Where did they get blue? Like lapis lazuli?
Lapis lazuli, Prussian blue, which is iron cyanide, and various synthetic blues.
Interesting.
So folks, let's wrap up our show. Let's go to our show closing page, if I can find it. So there's a couple of places that you'll see on the screen right now. They'll bring you to the various Tellest content that you can find out on the internet. Tellest.com is a great first place to start because it'll usually bring you to our other projects. We've got 3 premium sites that you should check out. Patreon.com/Tellest is where you can find our battle maps. It's the cheapest way that you can find them. But if you want physical versions of our battle maps, you can go to tellest.etsy.com. You'll also see all of Rhianna's handcrafted one-of-a-kind stuff there as well. Battlemapfantasy.com is where you can go to get to our drive-through RPG page, and that will get you to kind of like an a la carte style map making or map collecting thing. We've got 200 items on there now, which is pretty cool. And then we've got some TikTok channels for you. TikTok.com/@weirdwitchwands is where you can find videos of Rhianna's one-of-a-kind stuff. TikTok.com/@talesofTellest is where you can see videos of our pups. You are very lucky in that you can't smell the videos of our pups because we almost heaved ourselves out the window earlier. And then we've got 2 other video channels for you to check out. YouTube.com/@worldoftellest is where you're going to be able to find all of our videos well after we're knocked off of the Twitch platform after the 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is. But twitch.tv/thattellest guy is the only place that you can come check us out live, chat with us, get your quest coins, and tell Rhianna to hydrate when her voice gets too scratchy.
Yep.
But that's going to be it for tonight. We will be back tomorrow. Well, I'll be back tomorrow for making maps. But until then, we'll miss you.